Today on SHEROES.
One of the biggest opportunities I feel in my life at that time came through. And Idols that time was doing Idols East and Southern Africa, and they were auditioning for judges, and they went to several African countries. So everybody was talking, the who's in the industry were going for this audition. And I said, should I go? But there's Bruce over there, there's this guy. I went and I did the worst audition of my life, Anita. Worst. You know that one you forget words, you do this. Worst audition.
Today's episode, for me, is not only a long time coming, it is also really and truly a testimony of how much you manifest. Your mind, your body, your soul, how much you get what you always use your mouth to say you would get. It's going to be a powerful conversation because in there is a lot of stuff coming from a sister, a soul sister. And listen, I have to say, I feel so honored, so blessed. She's coming all the way from Kenya via Sierra Leone, and I've got none other than Africa's Angela Nyarangi ANGWENYI in the studio today. Ooh.
And the crowds go wild.
Nyarangi.
Hey, Anita.
Wow. I mean, everybody calls her Angela. I call her Nyarangi because honestly, for me, the name felt, and I never asked what it even means.
It means the colorful one. The colorful one. That explains a lot, clearly.
Wow.
I do love color.
Let's talk about your colorful life, Angela. We've known each other now since 2000.
I was just saying today, you're one of my oldest friends because we knew each other in university.
Yeah, you came to Trent University in 2000, and it's
and I'm terrible with dates,
so it's fine. So more than 20 years.
Yeah.
And
oh my God, it's been 20 years. We need an anniversary.
You know what I mean?
And I demand a present. I mean, you have not been treating me kindly, darling.
Listen, I can't explain. But Angela, you know, Africa knows you as that wild child from Kenya. You know, just before our conversation, you know, I was having a personal conversation. I said, wow, beyond what Angela and I talk about, I don't know what people think of her. And so I go on Google, your name, and a lot of the comments are about your unstoppability. Take me back to that moment when you as Angela realized that, yo man, I'm a powerful woman. Where were you and what were you doing?
I don't think there's ever been a moment. I think it's always been a battle between you have greatness in you and helping yourself realize that greatness in you. Because sometimes everything outside can distract you from that particular greatness. So it's consistently reminding myself, I can do this. You got this. There's greatness in you. It's a feeling. I don't even know how to describe it. You know, when you know there's more required of you. You need to reach out more. You need to find yourself more. So, you know, some people say it's divine, but I think I was destined to be great. Now, the how is what we're trying to figure out, man. This life thing can be hard. So we're trying to figure it out as we go through life's interesting journeys. But I love life. I think I've learned how to value life in a whole different way, given my journey, yeah.
Tell me about a major moment in your life when you thought to yourself, wow, Angela, you have really grown.
Was that just today? Do you know the funny thing is? It's the other day. And I look back at life because sometimes we're so fixated on seeing the issues and everything else, and we don't take time to reflect and see how far we've come. It literally was just the other day. I have come so far from where I used to be, and I'm so proud of myself. My goodness. I never thought I'd make it. I mean, come on. At 21, you have a child in a foreign country, Then you come home, you've not, collected your degree because your parents sent you to Canada, and you decided to find your own trouble. So you do 3 years, get pregnant, realize this life is not for you, eh? I mean, we lived in Canada. It was hard. You're raising a toddler. You have to do childcare. You have to go work. I mean, it was too much. It was too much. So I'm happy my mother actually said, "Come home." But it was one of the toughest things I ever had to do.
So hang on.
I'm
Don't
taking you
breathe. No,
quick.
hold on. Don't breeze right through a life-defining moment. So you came to Canada in 2000. And then you got pregnant.
In 2003, towards the end of 2003.
What happened?
Well, Anita, when a man and a girl get together.
That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about that moment. I mean, however you define it. What happened?
In terms of how did I get to that point?
Yeah.
I think I was a lost kid, huh? At 17, my mother felt, because she had made a promise to my dad that I would go abroad. All my other siblings were abroad. I was the one he claimed looked like him. So on his deathbed, my father died from cancer, and he was screaming my name, which still haunts me because I'm like, what was he trying to say? You know how people die in the movies and then they have that sage wisdom at the end and you really want to capture it?
But he never said what he wanted to say?
Exactly, because I never got to see him. I was in boarding school. So my father died when I was not there. So when they came to pick me up, and I always tell people this, I dreamt my father passing before I knew he had passed. And I dreamt the exact thing. I slept in my boarding house, or wherever it is in Precious Blood, Riruta. That night I had a dream my father died in an accident. And then somebody was coming to pick me up the next day, and I was called out of assembly. The next day, Anita, I was called out of assembly. And like you're watching your life and it's a movie. And I walked into Sister Patches's office, and my brother and somebody else was there. I can't remember who that was. And I was told, we need to go home. And you have that feeling.
You knew.
I knew. So then I went to, so of course the funeral happened and everything else. And my mother felt the need to say, okay, no, you have to go to Canada. I never wanted to go to Canada. I never wanted to leave Nairobi. I wanted to stay and be comfortable. I had my friends. I was, kind of figuring things out. Then I go to this place, which is cold, which has all these big buildings. I remember it felt like an alien world. You walk in malls, doors are opening. I've never seen this. And I felt so like a big girl in a big, big world. And I was just trying to find myself. I was lost.
We'll get to that experience, but if your father were alive at that time, would it have made a difference? You leaving Nairobi to go to Toronto, Peterborough, would his presence, physical presence, even back home, would it have made a difference?
Possibly, but now we'd never know. I think everything happens the way it's supposed to happen. I feel sometimes, yes, having a father in my life would have changed a few things, but my mother was the father and the mother, generally. I mean, I don't miss out on anything. I don't feel I missed out on anything, at least.
When you were leaving Nairobi to Canada, did you have conversations with your mother?
What conversations do we have with our mothers at that age? Our mothers tell us this is what you're going to do. You don't have a choice.
And you do it.
And I fought. Let me tell you, I wanted to do music. I wanted to be a musician. I wanted to go to Berkeley School of Music because everybody was talking about Berkeley. Then no, you're going to go do law because you know how to talk. I said, what is that? Just because you know how to talk, you're going to go do law. You need to do an undergrad, so go figure yourself out. So the undergrad became political science and a bit of psychology in the first semester. I had no choice. I was an artistic child. I always loved drama. In high school, I would get in trouble because I would concentrate on choir and other things more. I mean, my parents were doing what they thought was best for me at that time, which is you have to get into that career. You have to do that 9 to 5 kind of vibe. And the only viable careers were what? Lawyer, doctor, accountant, maybe.
Was a negotiation for you to go study, do your undergrad, and then come back home?
That was the negotiation, yeah.
And you were going to do law?
I was going to do law.
You didn't have a choice?
No, my mother decided I was a lawyer.
So you prepped your mentality that your music, your dance, that fire inside of you was going to be parked. Wherever it is was going to be parked. You were ready to let that go.
Did we have a choice, Anita? African parents, do you have a choice? They're paying for your school fees. Do you have a choice?
What about your siblings? Were they going through the same thing as you?
I guess so. My siblings all studied varied things, but our parents, to be honest, I don't blame my parents. They do what they feel is best for you in that time. Right now, I'm doing what I feel is best for my son. Only I'm doing it from a different lens, because now the world is a bit more open. I have conversations with my son even about what he may think he wants to do, because I went through that whole thing of being rushed into something that I really didn't want. So yes, I think we all went through the whole finding ourselves thing with the education thing. And yeah, pretty much. Does that answer your question?
It does. When you got to Canada, what happened to you? What happened to that light? What happened to Nyarangi? What happened to your color?
I think it was still there, if I recall. I have a terrible memory. But it was muted. It was muted with unfamiliarity, a lack of feeling home, which led me to finding releases or comfort in other things. Ooh, I broke my virginity. My mother is not listening to this show. Well, you said keep it real. And I remember, because I was looking, ooh, you're right. My father being there would have made a difference, because I found myself looking for a father figure, a man to help me feel safe or secure. So you find yourself dating the older men, the ones who seem more sure with themselves and so on and so forth, or trying to find a fix in all that. So yes, it would have made a difference. But it was muted. I was confused. I don't remember the start to finish. There's moments of Canada that are a blur.
A blur. I
do not recall. Anita, I lived there for 5 years. I barely remember, though I do remember your jollof rice. We used to come to your house all the damn time to eat. I know. I remember university a little bit.
Yes.
I remember giving birth. I remember how hard it was to raise Camille. I remember Camille, my son. But there are parts in there I'm like, what the hell did I do in Canada for 5 years? I can't remember. I remember the virginity thing.
It was a big deal, right?
It was so unromantic. I was like, what hype is this?
Yeah.
What is this that everybody keeps talking about?
Was it because were you emotionally lost? Where were you at that time?
I was lost, period. I was lost, period. I didn't know who I was. I knew what I liked. I didn't have emotional maturity to process a lot of things. I was just lost.
After the break, I want to talk about Angela's becoming a mother, the lessons she learned, and the gift of that young boy's life. We'll be back after this. So Angela, I appreciate your honesty about not having the emotional maturity and looking for yourself, being lost, you know, in a very, very unfamiliar territory. You don't have a father. Your mother is really doing her best to be mother and father, but she's miles away. At that point when you realized you were about to have a baby, what did it do to everything you've just described?
First, I was like, so I went home on holiday. It was Christmas holidays and I went home and I kind of had a nagging feeling something was off. I'd met this guy, and I was in uni at that point. I'd met this guy in Peterborough, and he was a DJ for, he had a set of DJs. You know me, I like them bad boys, you know. I wanted to be, hallelujah, Jesus, let me say.
That is you.
I wanted to save somebody's child. But anyway, so bad boy is always so nice to me, but he's nasty to everybody else. So then you feel, oh, I'm so special.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I liked this guy, and he lived in Toronto at that time. So when we met, it was like fleeting. So we'd meet in like little sporadic moments and stuff like that. So it was here and not there at the same time. Then I found out things about him. He used to sell drugs. He used to pimp. This is a story. People are like, Angela, really? Yes. This guy came one time to Peterborough, with the town I was in, and had a bunch of women with him and another guy. And I said, what are you guys doing? He's like, oh no, this is what he does for a living. And then they go to a motel room and then they put the girls there and they're working. I said, you know, if you cannot introduce somebody to your mother and say what it is that they do, then you better be checking yourself. Exactly.
But you were excited.
But of course I was excited.
There was something exciting about
this guy. Because he was nasty to everybody else and such an angel to me. So I was like, hey, okay. Anyway, so we did the damn thing, which wasn't memorable, but then I then go home and I'm feeling kind of funny. So you know you're expecting your period. And then I started feeling woozy. So my mother even took me to the hospital. This
By
is the funny
then,
thing.
hang on.
Uh-huh.
By then you are in Nairobi.
I was in Nairobi.
Home for the holidays.
Home for the holidays. And I'd broken up with this guy because I figured this thing is not going to go anywhere. If I can't tell Mrs. ANGWENYI, Mrs. ANGWENYI, you can't tell Mrs. ANGWENYI what
you're
that guy
seeing.
does for a living. He's going to be a
Then
problem.
forget it.
So I go to the hospital. This is how I think my mother knew, but she really wanted to deny it. Because we went to the hospital, even the doctor says, oh, I just think it's jet lag. Because I was feeling sick, I was tired, I was sleeping all the damn time. I was, what's wrong with you? Maybe it's that plain food you ate. So anyway, so we go to the doctor. Air sickness or whatever it is. I had a nagging feeling in the back of my head. So I said, when I go back, I'll deal with it. So I go back to Peterborough and then I say, okay, my period hasn't come in time. So I said, okay, let me check myself. I went and I got a test. Then I started spotting. So I said, okay, whew, we dodged that bullet. But you know, spotting, any woman knows spotting doesn't necessarily mean you're not pregnant. Huh? It didn't come. So I went to my auntie, Fezzi. You remember Fezzi?
I do.
And I said, look, I have this suspicious feeling that this is what is going on. She's like, oh, Angela, I'm happy. Calm down. You're happy for what? Do you know who my mother is? Calm down. We need to go let's go get tested. So we went and got tested and I was pregnant. So my life just stops at that point. I'm like, okay, so this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go for an abortion because there's no way I'm going to pick up the phone and tell my mother I am having a child. Fezzi, this is the only way. Fezzi's there like, oh, Angela, there's alternatives. I said, Fezzi, no, it's not going to work like this. You don't know where I come from. Now, my mother, strongest woman I know, staunch Catholic. Hey,
Trying to really pick up the pieces your father left behind, doing everything she can.
I have mad respect for that woman.
And
7
you're bringing
kids.
this news to her.
Can you imagine? 7 kids. She already has 6 others she has to deal with stress. And here I am going to tell her I am pregnant. Me. So I said, no. I booked an appointment. There was a few places doing abortions at that time. It was in Toronto. So I said, okay, fine. There was this guy I liked. Guys, there was this guy I liked. This is how I'm like, why? We had clicked and you introduced us. I remember you introduced me to Tony and we went on a date. And he was
I'm not even going to endorse this hookup.
So Anita, the master hookup, hooks me up with this guy. Says, Angela, why don't you go on a date? Because you were working at Flow 90...
Flow 93.5.
93.5,
Yeah.
and he was
Yeah.
working there at the
Yeah.
same time. So now imagine I've come back and I'm trying to figure my life out, find out I'm pregnant. Now, of course I have to tell this guy that I'm interested in because clearly it's going to come up in conversation if stuff does happen. And I guess he took it like a champ, but I guess what did I expect? He was like, oh, okay.
Somebody else's baby.
Somebody else's baby. And how does that work? You know, in my head, I'm like, okay, this could work. You know, you're trying to convince yourself. I'm like, anyway. So I told him I'm having an abortion and I'm planning to come into Toronto. Can I come and stay with you when I do have this procedure, right? I think it was a sweetheart then. Still is a sweetheart, by the way, because we still stay in touch. Then as time was, you know, you have to have an abortion before 12 weeks because otherwise then it becomes dangerous. I don't know why I kept on, there was a nagging feeling that I never wanted to have this. But I said, no, I'm not going to have this conversation. Fezzi, on the other hand, is talking to me, Angela, just call your mom, just tell her the time is ticking. So I'm at 12 weeks and she says, Angela, the doctor then said, Angela, maybe you need to tell somebody, you know, sometimes these things don't go the way they're supposed to go. And the thing that made me call my mother is I said, I'd hate for her to be called by somebody and be told that your daughter has died because she couldn't talk to you and you're in this situation. So, you know, you didn't go, you know, you went in and had a procedure and, you know, just didn't walk out alive. So I said, I won't do that to my mother. The hardest phone call I've ever made in my entire life, I still remember it to this day, because I picked up the phone and I told my mother, Mom, this and this and this has happened. She was quiet. And I remember exactly what she said. She said, well, you've done the deed. You must, you know, own up to the consequences of your deed. There's nothing like abortion in this house. Wow. I said, okay. She disconnected the phone. Now, from that point to the point when I had my, that was a whole other journey. So I said, okay, phew, okay, mom says it's okay, so I guess it's all right. But the whole pregnancy thing was hard because I went through depression. I was depressed my entire pregnancy, and I'd find ways to fix it. And because I'm looking for that companionship or somebody to say, okay, it's okay. So all the guys I liked, so I thought, okay, if you like me, you will take me with my baby, right?
With a baby bump?
Oh, girl. I think the girls these days have it easy because now guys are used to women having kids. I mean, I'm seeing guys who are
Don't
dating
even
women.
justify.
I swear to God, I'm seeing girls dating guys. They're pregnant with somebody else's child and the guy is okay with it. In those days, my God, Anita.
Oh my
There's this
goodness,
one guy I liked.
Angela.
My God. I traveled towns to go see this guy. I remember the day I told him I was pregnant. I've never felt like beneath the shoe like that day. I felt like shit. And I said, okay, fine. This is not going to work. I met this Natty Dread though. He was obsessed with pregnant women and I said, nah, Angela, this is not a relationship you want to maintain. So now that I'm bearing all my secrets, this episode...
Don't worry, it's gone.
Anyway, so I had a difficult pregnancy. So my aunt was great. She was there for me. I moved in with her during this period. I remember you guys threw me a baby shower. There was a baby shower. I was staying with Gavoni and everybody else at that time. And they were really supportive, I must say. So my friends rallied around me.
Yeah.
And then I gave birth. I remember 4 a.m. in the morning, I'm in the middle of rolling over. I feel a big bust. And then there's water everywhere. So I'm running to my auntie's room. I'm like, I'm not understanding what's going on because clearly I've never been pregnant before. Oh, she says, oh, Angela, okay, your water's broken. Let's go. So we go to the hospital. When we get to the hospital, we find out that I've got this thing called the HELP syndrome. The HELP syndrome means your blood pressure goes up and it puts you and the baby in danger. So you have to have an emergency C-section. Otherwise, you could risk losing both of you. So I'm like, oh, crap, of all the things I have to think about. And then they show me this big long needle. I'm like, you guys are not serious. I mean, you don't know I don't like needles. I have to stick this thing in the back of my spine. I said, no. So in the middle of it all, I'm saying, no, Auntie Fazzi, we're not doing this. We're not doing this. She's like, Angela, we have to do it. So we get in, they stick the needle in me. So I'm half numb. So I'm awake. And the baby process is happening. So all I'm feeling is pressure, pressure, pressure. And then all of a sudden they bring this little gremlin and they bring the thing to me. And I'm not resonating that this is child. My aunt's like, oh, look at the baby. I'm like, ew, what is this going on here? And she's like, no, Angela. Okay, anyway, you're not okay.
You didn't.
They put the baby here. I didn't feel anything. You know, Anita, I always say, if I never had my son, I'm not sure I may have had kids. Maybe eventually I would have had kids, but I was never a baby person. I was always like, oh, look at that thing there. Oh, it's so small, it's so tiny. I only held babies at a certain point when they were grown up enough to be regular humans. You know?
So wait, after the break, how Angela has made it work, even though life was dealing her and throwing her all the tomatoes, she wasn't making jollof with them, but how she has been able to pick herself up piece by piece and to mold this extraordinary African woman.
Previously on Sheroes.
And I said, look, I have this suspicious feeling that this is what is going on. She's like, oh, Angela, I'm happy. Calm down. You're happy for what? Do you know who my mother is? Calm down. We need to go let's go get tested. So we went and got tested and I was pregnant. So my life just stops at that point. I'm like, okay, so this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go for an abortion because there's no way I'm going to pick up the phone and tell my mother I am having a child.
You've just had a baby.
I just had a baby, yeah.
The baby has been given to you and you're thinking,
what is this? Is this happening? Again, an out-of-body experience. Then I remember waking up in the hospital, then they brought this child and I was like, okay, I guess this is it. It's just you and me, kiddo. That's what it was.
his
And
father?
it's always been there. Was never a part of his life. Oh, I didn't tell you the story. So I called him when I was 4 months pregnant and I said, okay, undergoing a lot of pressure from my family. Who's this guy? My brothers wanted to fly from America to come and beat some guy. I said, what are you coming here to do? The minute I knew I was pregnant, I had made a resolve that I was going to do this alone. Because remember, I'd been rejected several times. I said, Angela, you can do this by yourself. But my brothers were like, no, let him pay this. I said, man, I really don't need him. I'll figure it out. So they insisted. I called him and I said, look, this is what has happened. And I'm going to have an abortion. The first time I called him, I said, I'm having an abortion. Are you going to abort my baby? I said, you've come from telling me you've got 2 kids, 2 different mothers. You barely see them. Is this the life you want me to lead? I'm going to make the decision myself. And now retrospectively, look at me standing up for myself, girl. Anyway, so now after that whole situation, I called him 4 months later and said, look, let's sit down and figure this thing out. So let's meet in Peterborough, this, that. I gave him an opportunity. I'm not one to cut anybody out of their child's life. It's not me. I gave him an opportunity. He didn't show up. And for me, that was a sign. And I said, I'm not going to set up my child for disappointment. He already knows who I am. If he wants to find me, he'll find me. And if my son ever wants to reach out, he can reach out. But I'm not going to do that whole thing he used to do to his kids where you say you're coming to see a child and then you don't show up. And then the child is heartbroken. And then they have this warped view of life. I really don't want that. So I left that and I let it go. So the father has never been a part of my son's life since he was born.
Has he ever seen him since?
No.
So you've been the mother?
I've been mother, father, and all things, and best friend. But I've not been a mother alone. So my mother is actually has been really core in helping me raise my son. Really, really core.
She just took it like a champ.
Yes and no. So when I gave birth, and we decided that it was hectic for me to raise Camille in Canada, I went back home. And because what I realized is my mother hadn't processed it to see it. It's one thing to know your child has a child. It's another thing when the child actually is coming home and you're seeing that your child has a child. She was never really okay with it during the whole process. It was hard for her to deal with this because I know parents blame themselves. They feel they're a disappointment. What did I do wrong? Didn't I advise her this? I mean, how could she do this? Then there's the African shame. People tell you, oh, your child, this one is not going to amount to anything. She's had a child out of wedlock. What is this that you're bringing to us? There's also societal issues. Then there's religion to bring on top of it. Oh, this one, she went and had premarital sex. This one and the other. There's a lot of shaming in society. So much shaming. So I can understand where her head was at. So when I went to Nairobi, landed at JKIA, my mother actually didn't pick me up from the airport. She sent her brother, my uncle. And I said, hey, where's mom? Hey, you know, your mom is at home. You know, this one is a bit hard. So I said, okay. We drove. And we went home and I saw my mother. And I think her seeing me and the child was a lot. And being a mother, I understand that, and I don't blame her. It was a lot. So she saw me, and she couldn't, it just wasn't working for her at that point. So she had to take a beat. Because it took her even a while to hold her grandchild, because she was still coming to terms with her baby having a baby, and it's hard. So I say this because as much, I think we have to give, it's difficult. Sometimes we expect people to just love us anyway. You know, no. You have to give people a chance to evolve to that point where they process. Thank you very much. And she processed, by the way, and now they're best of friends. That's her last born.
Wow.
Yeah. So she became a second mother to my son. But that woman, man, she's strong, eh? I have mad respect for my mother.
Angela's episode and conversation have taught me something. Listen, you can be a planner, you can be strategic and all of that kind of fancy stuff. But you also have to know that life happens. And sometimes when life happens, even though it throws you off, there is a big lesson to be learned. And most importantly, there's a fault to be accepted. When you accept that it is your doing, it's really, truly exciting how you are able to fix that problem and how you grow when you fix it. Angela, thank you very much
You're
for
welcome,
coming
my
on to
darling.
Sheroes. I really appreciate it. Really,
I really
truly.
appreciate it, and I'm so proud of you, Anita.
Thank you, baby.
You've done well.
I'm proud of you too. And if you're out there and you're saying I'm proud of you to somebody in your network, we want to know who it is. We want to have those conversations, and we want these wonderful women to come on the show and be open, transparent, authentic about who they truly are, because only then will somebody out there feel the need to claim their space. Okay? Go on all our social media pages. There's a lot more on Angela and all my guests that you can find and connect with them, because together we'll create one big, glorious Africa and glorious world, one woman at a time. See you later. Bye-bye.
It's a Boss Lady game.